How you doing, YouTube? This is Gunnery767 bringing you a new YouTube video. Today's YouTube video is going to be over SHTF refrigeration. A couple of weeks ago, I made a video in regards to SHTF power generation and also a review of my Jackery 550 Explorer. In that video, which I'm actually going to have down in the description below, I spoke on some of the main pillars of SHTF power generation. One of the first ones was climate control. For SHTF power generation, you want to have the ability to generate power to control your climate inside of wherever you're living at, whether it's your apartment, your house. If you're bugging out and you have to live in your car, you want the ability to control the climate. If you live in a cold place, you want to go ahead and make sure you can heat up that environment. If you live in a hot place, such as like I do in North Florida, you want to be able to cool that climate wherever you're living at. The other part is, the other main pillar is going to be able to power up all of your essential devices. Your cell phones for communications. You're going to want to go ahead and power up lights. Lights is a big thing during power outages, during natural disasters. And the very last thing that you want to make sure that you have power generation during an SHTF event is for refrigeration, which we're going to cover today. In front of you, I have a Iceco JP42 3-in-1 electric cooler. Now this thing is awesome. I went ahead and hooked up my Jackery 550 Explorer, and this thing knocked it out of the park. I couldn't have been more happier. But we'll get into that in a minute. Some of the other major prepping channels, like the real big prepping channels, such as like City Prepping, who's a massive prepper channel, Alaska Prepper, Canadian Prepper. If you go ahead and talk about like Survival Lily over there in Austria, all of them touch on SHTF power generation and refrigeration. And I agree with almost every single thing that they say. But the one thing that I kind of differ with is they all talk about powering normal refrigerators. And with powering normal refrigerators, you're talking about a couple hundred watts per hour to keep that refrigerator up and running. So if you're going to utilize solar, you are going to have to get a pretty big power unit to be able to effectively power them. You're talking about startups usually around anywhere between 300 to 600 watts, and running watts of like 200 to 300, sometimes even 4, depending on the size of the refrigerator. So I kind of want to go ahead and take a different turn on that. I want to go ahead and look at something more compact and something that is much more doable for people on a budget, which is what's sitting in front of you. Again, my Iceco JP42 3-in-1 electric cooler. Now, some of the specs on this is it weighs about 50 pounds. It's got a C-Cop compressor, which C-Cop turned into, or it was additionally a different German company that did these compressors, but they're renowned for their durability. Its rated voltage is, if it's going off of DC, 12 to 24 volts. DC is this nice little cigarette plug lighter. And then the voltage for the AC is going to be 110 watts to 24 volts. or 110 volts to 24 watts, excuse me. And then we sit down there and would go ahead and use this brick. We'd go ahead and hook up this part to the cigarette lighter coming from the Iceco JP42 into your wall socket or your generator, your gasoline generator. Its function, it can either be a fridge or a freezer, or you can even go ahead and utilize this as a cooler. You can go ahead and throw ice in this thing. So it really is kind of a jack of all trades piece of equipment for your SHTF refrigeration. The power consumption for this, now Iceco's specs say about 520 or 520 kilowatt hours. So it's 520 watts for every 24 hours. And that's like the average. When I conducted my very first test with this, I actually got way better results, but I like to keep my house cooler when I did this, so I wanted to go ahead and put it, my initial test in the environment I put my house in, which I normally keep my house at about anywhere between 67 to 70 degrees. I like my house cold. Some of the features that this thing has is the drain plug is solid, which is right over here. Let me go ahead and move this around a bit. Drain plug is about right here, and you just unscrew it and it'll go ahead and drain all the water out if you utilize it as a cooler. Also, you have some high quality handles that are right here. These are molded into the cooler, so they're pretty sturdy. They're on both sides. You have some really nice rubber latches that are pretty tight that hold the lid down. And the lid on these things have a seal. And inside you have a little, like a little basket that sits at the top of this thing. It's constructed of roto-molded construction. Additionally, it also has a control panel. Which is right here. And this thing is can go from 50 degrees all the way down to 0 degrees. Now when I tested this, I had it all the way at 0, but my temperature never got lower than 3 degrees. So there's a little discrepancy there, but it still freezes, it's still solid, it still maintains its temperature really, really well because of the roto-molded construction on this thing. Also, right up here, you can't see it, but there's two cup holders, and then there's a little holder for your cell phone and things like that. Right here, you have your exhaust, so when it starts getting hot, this compressor, this is where it sucks the air into. All right, so what can this Iceco JP42 iCooler do? Well, I can go ahead and stick 68 cans of normal soda, which is 355 milliliters inside this thing. I can go ahead and stick 37 bottles of mineral water, which are like 550 milliliters, and then I can go ahead and put 18 bottles of 750 milliliter wine bottles in this thing. So it actually holds a lot of food. When I was testing this out, I actually made it to where I was able to put 3 full butcher boxes of meat in this thing. get it all the way down to about, I think it was 36 degrees Fahrenheit, and it kept all of that meat cold. Now, I also went ahead and put a bunch of other things in there, like your milk, your eggs, cheeses. I went ahead and put like lunch meats, and I kept it at 36 degrees, and it did wonderfully. So this thing is pretty amazing. Now, the test that I ran on this thing, I ran my Jackery 550 Explorer. I ran it from 100% to 0%, and that lasted, that battery, without recharging with solar or through a AC plug, which is like a household plug, for 43 hours and 4 minutes, just on a single 550 watt charge on my Jackery Explorer 550. That was pretty amazing. Now, some of the control features I had on that, I started at 4:45 p.m. and then 2 days later, almost 2 days later, it ended at 9:49 a.m. 2 days later. The compressor kicked on at an average of 9 minutes and 32 seconds during this whole time. And then the compressor was off for an average of 43 minutes and 15 seconds. I couldn't believe that. With all of those butcher box meat items in there, all frozen, it definitely helped maintain the temperature in there. And then very little escape there as far as from the seal on this thing. It's very well insulated. It did awesome. Now with this, I did open it up several times to mimic, you know, going in and out of it during the normal everyday, you know, activities of throughout the day, and it held up pretty good. Again, I set the Iceco temp at 36 degrees Fahrenheit on the control panel. At my house, my room temperature for the duration of this test was 67 degrees Fahrenheit. So yeah, this is an outstanding piece of gear to have during any type of SHTF event. In a hurricane, again, I live in North Florida, so hurricanes are a very, very normal natural disaster that happens every single year. Where I live, they don't hit us too often, but the storm surges, the tornadoes, things of that nature that usually accompany those hurricanes usually do affect us, and it usually affects us by way of power outage. So this piece of gear is very important. That way you don't have to go ahead and power a massive fridge that's going to be gobbling up anywhere between 400 to 600 watts. I can go ahead and hook this up to my Jackery Explorer 550, and during a normal conditions, it will go ahead and last well over a day. And then of course I have my solar panels that can go ahead and recharge it during full sun. What my plan is to get a Jackery Explorer 1000. That way I can go ahead and switch them out. So my 550 gets to about the 24-hour mark, I'll unhook it, put in the Jackery 1000. That way I can go ahead and keep my refrigerator constantly running and keep my food fresh. I mean, if you're a prepper, you're watching this channel, so you probably got a lot of dry goods, but you also want the ability to keep meats and milk products and cheese and some of your fruits, vegetables. I even put bread in the refrigerator to maintain it, to keep it chilled. That way it doesn't spoil as fast. So this is definitely a game changer. You know, you require minimum power. When the compressor kicked on in this thing, the highest amount of wattage that it pulled was 61 watts. And the lowest amount was, while it was running, was about 48. So like I said, I averaged 9 minutes and 32 seconds while the compressor was on, and then I averaged 43 minutes and 15 seconds when the compressor was off. So it was very, very frugal with the Jackery Explorer 550. All right, YouTube, that's about it for today. Please go ahead and like if you liked this content. If you thought this video was helpful, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and please go ahead and share with your friends and family down in the comments. Yeah, go ahead and tell me if you agree with this. If you got any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. As I get the comments, I'll go ahead and try to answer every single one of them, reply back to y'all. This is Gunnery Sergeant 67. I'm out.